Salvete discipuli. So in the last video, we were talking about third declension adjectives. We're going to continue talking about third declension adjectives in this video. In the first video, we were talking about adjectives of two terminations. So what does that mean? That means we were talking about adjectives like these: gravis grave, brevis breve, communis commune, difficilis difficile. These are adjectives of two terminations. They have two different parts to their dictionary form. And when you have an adjective of two terminations, you have two different, what that means is you have two different nominative singular forms. So omnis omne has two different nominative singular forms. We use omnis for the masculine and the feminine, and we use omne for the neuter. We use a different one for the neuter. And that's how adjectives of two terminations work. And so there was our example of an adjective of two terminations, fully declined. And here were our sentences that used omnis omne. Omnes leges Romanae in Roma sunt. All Roman laws are in Rome. So there was our word laws. It actually had two adjectives describing it. We had all describing laws, and we also had Roman describing laws. Roman is a second declension adjective, so Romanus aum, and omnes is a third declension adjective. Leges, the word lex is a feminine word, and so we have feminine endings on our adjectives. Romanae is a feminine ending, feminine plural, and omnes is an ending that can be feminine, right? So omnes leges Romanae in Roma sunt. And we had imperator copiam frumentorum omnibus legionibus dedit, to all the legions gave. All right, what we're going to do in this video is we're going to look at an adjective of three terminations. All that's going to mean is that in our nominative singular form, each gender is going to have its own ending. So if we look at the three terminations of this adjective, what looks familiar to you? What looks similar to the last video? You should notice that the is one is used in the feminine, and it was used in the feminine before, and the one with an e at the end, acre, is in the neuter. But what's new? Masculine has something different. Acer. Now we have three terminations: acer, acris, acre. And that's how adjectives of three terminations are going to be. Masculine's going to have its own, feminine's still going to have an is, neuter's still going to have an e at the end, and then all the rest of the forms are going to be as we did them in the previous video. And so the only really thing there is to learn is which adjectives are three termination adjectives. And that third termination, that masculine one, what is it? And they're pretty much going to end in which that shouldn't be new to us, right? The error rule tells us that words are masculine. So it's fitting that if masculine is going to have something different, it would end in er, right? So let's fill out the rest of this chart. So let's start with the neuter. Acre. Here we're going to have acria and acria. This form here, acris, the feminine one, that's also going to be the genitive for all the genders. So we're going to do acris again. Next comes acri. That's going to be our dative singular for all the genders. Acrem. We're going to use acrem in the accusative, but not over here because it has to be the same as the nominative. All genitive plurals are I stems, so acrium, acrium, acrium. And then here we're going to have acri again, but sometimes acre. I'm going to copy that and put it into all of the ablative singular parts. Here, we're going to do acres. Acres is going to get a lot of usage. It's going to be the plural for the feminine, and it's going to be the plural for the accusative. Not for this one, though. It's going to be acria. Here, we're going to do acribus. And there's going to need to be 6 of those. And there is our full declension of acer, acris, acre. And that's how the dictionary form for this would look. Acer, acris, acre. Now, we see from the is, a endings that it's not an us, a, right? So we know it's a third declension adjective. And we see 3 parts to the dictionary form, and so we know it's an adjective of 3 terminations. We know that acer is the masculine one, acris is the feminine one, and acre is the neuter one, because that's how adjectives of 2 terminations went. And we just know that that's the order we show them in: masculine, feminine, neuter. All right, let's look at our sentences. Romani frumenta acria Gallis dederunt. Okay, so dederunt is our verb. It's a plural verb, so it means they gave. So who's the they that gave? Let's look over here and see at the beginning of our sentence. Does this make sense that this word would be our subject? Romani. Well, it's a plural. That means the Romans. Yeah, so we're going to say the Romans gave. The Romans gave. Now, what did they give? They gave what's in the accusative. So, frumenta acria Gallis. Well, Gallis doesn't look like an accusative. Frumenta could be an accusative. It could be an accusative plural. Yep, it's frumentum, frumenti. It's a neuter word, right? It's a second declension neuter word. So frumenta is a plural accusative. It's also a plural nominative, but we're looking for something that can be our subject. We already have our subject, right? So this is probably being used as accusative. So is it gave grain or is it gave crops? Crops, because it's plural. So gave crops. What kind of crops? There's an adjective that's describing crops. Okay, it's also has a neuter ending, and it's acria. So gave sour crops. Ooh, sour crops. Now, you could put sharp crops, I suppose, keen crops, but crops can't be keen, and it would be weird for crops to be sharp. So sour crops, to the Gauls, Gallis, and that's a dative plural, to the Gauls. So we have the Romans gave sour crops to the Gauls. Romani frumenta acria Gallis dederunt. Okay. Now for the harder one, English to Latin. The boy came into town with a keen friend and sharp swords. Keen and sharp are the same word here. So we're going to be using this acer, acris, acre 2 times, but they're probably not going to be the same ending because this one's describing a singular friend and this one's describing plural swords. Okay, so who's our subject? The boy. And what's he doing? He came. So puer is boy, and venit, it means came. So this, we have puer venit, the boy came. Now we need to say he came into town. So oppidum, oppidi is our dictionary form for town. So he came into town in, we're going to need the accusative. What is the accusative of oppidum, oppidi? Oh, it's again. In oppidum. So in oppidum means into the town. Puer in oppidum venit. The boy came into the town. Now we need to add with a keen friend and sharp swords. So cum is our with. Now cum takes the ablative. So when we put keen friend, both of those are going to be in the ablative. Cum amico, with a friend. Now, after friend, we need to put our word for keen. So I'm just going to put ac, because there's our beginning, acr. So with a keen friend, friend is amicus amici. It's masculine. So acri. Okay, here's one where we might be tempted to put acre, but we're going to put acri. Cum amico acri. Et. And then when we say sharp swords, we're going to still have them be ablative because this cum is still governing the sharp swords with a keen friend and with sharp swords. So the with is working on both. It's making both ablative. So with swords, gladiis, acribus, cum gladiis acribus. So with sharp swords. So our final sentence is puer in oppidum cum amico acri et gladis acribus venit. Okay, there's an adjective of 3 terminations. We're going to switch to adjectives of just 1 termination. And typically in the dictionary form, since there's only 1 termination, what it's actually going to show is it's going to show 2 parts, but instead of those 2 parts being 2 different things to show up in the yellow, it's actually going to give you the genitive. So amans, amantes. So it's actually what it's doing here in the second part of the dictionary form is it's actually giving you the genitive, kind of like nouns, kind of like dictionary forms for nouns do. So amans really is our 1 termination, and amantis is our genitive. So we're going to take amantis and we're going to put it down here. And amans shows up in all three spots. Now I want to tell you something about adjectives of 1 termination. A lot of the time you can take a verb and make an adjective out of it. So the verb amare, amo, amas, amat, amamus, amatis, amant. Okay, that's the way to conjugate the verb amare in the present indicative tense. So I love, you love, he or she loves, we all, you all love, they love. Amo, amas, amat, amamus, amatis, amant. So is our stem of love, right? And what you can do is you can take that verb and change it into an adjective. So this adjective is loving. So puer amans means the loving boy, the boy who does that verb, right? Who loves, but it's the loving boy, and so it's being used as an adjective here. And anytime you take a verb and you make an adjective out of it, it's going to be a third declension adjective, and it's going to be a third declension adjective of 1 termination. And it's always going to end in ns, amans. We see words like this in scientific forms, by the way, like Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens is one of these. Sapiens just means knowing. It's knowing as an adjective. It's what kind of man? The knowing man. Homo sapiens. And what would the genitive form be of sapiens? If we were filling this chart out for sapiens, it would be sapientis. So we would take that S and turn it into a tis. So it'd be ntis, ntis. Amans, amantis. Sapiens, sapientis. What other verbs do we know? The fortifying man, right? Muniverunt. Munivorens, maybe. Munivorentis. It would work that way. Okay, let's take amant and let's keep going with it because that's going to be our stem for all the rest. Amanti, amantem, amanti, sometimes amante, amantes. We're going to copy amantes. We're going to use it down here. We're going to use it up here. We're going to use it down there. Here, what are we going to do? We're going to put amans again. Here, we're going to use amantia. amantia, and we're going to use it twice, amantia. We're going to have this one be amantium. All third declension adjectives are I stems. So amantium, amantium, amantibus, amantibus. We're going to use that 6 times total. We're going to take this amanti and we're going to use it over here and over here. Amantem again. We're going to use amanti, sometimes amante, amanti, sometimes amante. And there is amans, amantis, fully declined. Let's use that in some sentences. Puer amans, puellum pulchrum videt. So here is our amans. It's describing the puer. So the loving boy, what's he doing? Videt. He sees. And what does he see? He sees the things that are in the accusative. So he sees a girl, puellum looks accusative, and pulchrum looks accusative. And it looks like he sees a pretty girl. So the loving boy sees a pretty girl. And our next sentence, the loving master gave grain to the loving slave. So we're going to use loving 2 times here. So the loving master, we're going to see loving in the nominative. And then he gave grain to the loving slaves. We're going to see loving being used in the dative here because to the slaves requires dative. To the loving slaves requires 2 datives. Slaves are going to be dative, and so is the adjective that's describing slaves. So we're going to see slaves twice. Okay, the loving master, dominus is master. And because this is an adjective of 1 termination, amans is going to be used for all genders, so it doesn't matter as long as it's singular, right? Dominus amans. Okay, he gave grain. So we'll save save gave till the end. So let's do grain. Frumentum would be grain in the accusative. And is there any kind of grain? Nope, just grain without an adjective. So frumentum to the loving slaves. So let's put slaves in the dative. Servus, servi. To plural, so it'd be servis. All right, and then we're going to use amant. So we want dative and plural. No, and masculine. So amantibus. So amantibus. And then we got to put our verb, dedit. So here's our sentence. Dominus amans frumentum servis amantibus dedit. Dominus amans frumentum servis amantibus dedit. And we have one more adjective of 1 termination. It's the adjective diligens, diligentis. And this comes from a verb also, the verb diligo. Diligo, diligas, diligat, diligamus, diligatis, diligant. And when we make an adjective out of it, it's diligens, diligentis. And it means diligent or it means careful. What does the verb mean then? If the adjective form means diligent or careful? Well, it means to really prize or esteem something. And so if you really prize or esteem something, you're going to pay a whole lot of attention to it. You're going to be very particular about it. And so maybe you didn't know that there was a verb that diligens, diligentis came from. But diligentis is going to be our accusative, our genitive, singular, diligens, diligentis. Here it would be diligenti, and we're going to use that. For dative, diligentem, And then we're going to put diligenti, sometimes diligente. And let's copy what's going to get used a lot. Diligenti, diligente, diligenti, diligente. Here it's going to be diligentem. And here it's actually going to be diligens again. Here we're going to use diligentes. I'll copy that because we're going to use that on our accusative plural, our nominative plural, our accusative plural. Diligentium. All third declension adjectives are I stems, so diligentium, diligentium, diligentium. Here we're going to use diligentia, diligentia, and then diligentibus. And we're going to use that in all the remaining spots. Oops. All right, let's take a look at, I don't have sentences set up for this one. So we lucked out, that's the end of our video. All right, so now we know adjectives of the third declension, and we have examples of how adjectives of the third declension work with various different numbers of terminations. And so that is awesome. Valete omnes.